I was filling up my hummingbird feeder, the yummy sugar water sparkling in the morning sun, when I looked up and saw a lady walking across my rocky driveway like she owned the whole world and was the boss of everything. She had on a fancy jacket, shiny pearl earrings, and high heels that made loud clicking sounds as she walked. She held a clipboard in one hand, and in the other hand, a coffee mug that said, "I'm the boss." Her name was Vivian Caldwell, and she was the president of the neighborhood group, and she didn't come to be nice or say hello. Without even saying hi, she pointed her fancy fingernail at my log house like it had done something really mean to her. "We decided your little house will be where my daughter gets married," she said like she was totally sure about it. "It's going to be so pretty, you need to move out by Thursday." I just stood there frozen, blinking, while she gave me a fake smile that felt more like getting a really bad present than something nice. Before I could say anything, she turned to the lady helping plan the wedding, a woman who had a measuring tape wrapped around her neck like a necklace, and said, "We need to paint that ugly porch something cream-colored." It was so weird watching these two strangers walk around my yard measuring stuff and talking about my windows like they were shopping at a yard sale. I had no clue how they got past my locked fence. Vivian kept saying things like, "You're doing this to help everyone in the neighborhood. Understand, just think about the pictures your cute little house would make as a pretty country background." The wedding planner's earphone blinked like a warning light, like she was talking to people planning a wedding battle. They didn't ask if it was okay or talk about paying me. They just acted like my quiet house in the woods was theirs to use for taking fancy pictures. I stepped in front of them while Vivian opened up some papers and started reading in a voice that could make a hole. "Classroom, be quiet." She said something about Article 9, Part B of the Neighborhood Rules Agreement. I stopped her and said, "Vivian, that only works for HOA houses. This cabin is on my own land, not in your neighborhood." She looked at me like I'd spoken, in a different language, and laughed. "Surely you won't be the person to wreck a young girl's special day." Her voice got all shaky when she said special day, and for a second I thought maybe someone was playing a trick on me for a TV show. "No," I said. "Staying strong I won't be." Her eyes got small and she moved closer. Her perfume smelled strong enough to hurt your nose. "I can make your life really hard for you." She pushed a shiny folder into my hands full of flower pictures and a chart showing where people would sit. The front, in fancy writing, said Vivian's wedding dream. Her daughter's wedding wasn't just a party. It was a huge show with hot air balloons, a harp player, and a 5-layer cake that looked like a tree stump. She wanted me to disappear for the whole weekend, letting strangers in fancy shoes walk all over my land just so she could show off. I waited until their high heels made crunching sounds going away on the rocks, then closed my door with a really good slam, the hummingbirds buzzing outside mixed with the mad feelings bubbling up in my chest. I called my friend Jake, a tree expert who lived a few towns over Jake, who always smelled like pine trees, and once taught his parrot to sound like a chainsaw, laughed so hard he almost choked when I told him what happened. "Dude," he said, trying to breathe, "you should invite someone totally crazy like people who collect chainsaws to a big meeting. It was supposed to be funny, but the word chainsaw got stuck in my head." A quick search on the internet led me to Timber Tribe, a group of people who loved chainsaws and really needed a place to meet after their last place burned down during a cookout accident. Their website was full of chainsaw pictures and tips about carving wood. I wrote about my house, and in just a few minutes they wrote back, "We'll take it. We'll bring logs and prizes." Looking at the email saying yes, I realized what I had just started. Vivian thought she'd get violin music and fancy lace. Instead, she'd have to deal with people in flannel shirts holding loud machines. I drank my coffee with a big smile growing as I imagined her face when she saw her pretty wedding place taken over by chainsaw craziness. The next day, I hammered a sign onto my fence. "Private party planned. No coming on my land." In smaller words, it said warning really loud machines being used. I'd already gotten permission from the tree department. Vivian would need more than her clipboard to stop this. Thursday morning, the big trucks came. Monsters painted with grizzly bears and chainsaws that looked like space weapons. Men and women, wearing safety glasses and lumberjack hats, unloaded stuff like they were setting up a rock concert. The air got thick with gas smell and sawdust. One guy started carving a mean-looking wolf before his engine even cooled down. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Vivian's white SUV screeched to a stop with license plates that said, Queen. She got out with the wedding planner behind her, waving her clipboard like a magic wand. Her mouth fell open when she saw a guy in suspenders making his chain sharper while humming a song. Another guy stacked logs into what looked like a rude hand gesture. "What is this?" she yelled, marching to the fence where I stood with lemonade. "You said no to a wedding, but said yes to this chainsaw circus." I pointed to the crowd. "This is a private party, completely allowed safety people here and everything. I pointed to a sign, chainsaw teaching class free if you sign up educational." She opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. "This is... you trying to wreck everything?" "No," I said. "This is me owning my own land. You tried to take what's mine. I just beat you at your own game." Her face turned red, her lips moving between being really mad and not believing what was happening. She stomped back to her SUV, kicking up rocks onto her own shoes. That night, the chainsaw people had a big fire and told stories. Someone carved the HOA newsletter into a tree stump and threw it into the fire. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. I leaned back, with stars above me, realizing this was the best thing to ever happen to my little house. The only wedding that weekend would be between gas and machine power. Vivian had no clue what loud sounds were waiting for her. Friday morning was still quiet. Before the craziness, birds sang. Not knowing about the storm coming, I walked outside in my slippers with coffee in my hand to the sound of a chainsaw echoing through the pine trees. The first class had started. A guy with a big beard named Caleb, looking like a Viking warrior with flame-colored sunglasses, showed everyone how to cut logs without the saw jumping back. The crowd cheered as he cut pine wood like it was butter. Then I heard Vivian's SUV creeping up the rocks, slow like a hunting animal. She brought back up her daughter Elise in a delicate cream-colored dress and shoes that weren't good for walking, plus 2 HOA board members, including Roger, who once made me pay money for having a green mailbox that wasn't the right kind. Vivian, taking video on her phone, complained about loud noise and criminal damage. She charged toward me with heels stabbing the ground. "Stop this right now! You're breaking rules and wrecking a wedding!" I handed her folded papers from my flannel shirt pocket. "This is permission from the county for loud noise for teaching forestry stuff. Look at the official stamp." She held it like it was poison, her face twitching. Roger just shrugged and couldn't help Elise, though stared at a bear statue and whispered, "That's actually pretty cool." Vivian spun around at her. "You are not thinking that's nice." Elise blinked with doubt creeping into her eyes. Vivian tried attacking again. "You're blocking public walking paths." I said back that land is mine, I bought it last year at an auction. "Want to see the survey?" She didn't want to see it. Beaten, she called an emergency HOA meeting, announcing it with papers talking about violent problems and inappropriate tool use. I almost choked on my sandwich laughing. Caleb offered to carve a beaver, chewing a chainsaw for the special occasion. The meeting, held in Vivian's lemon-scented, shiny living room, was a joke. She stood like an army general, saying I was trying to cause trouble on purpose. I pointed out her wedding wasn't approved and her neighborhood rules didn't count for my land. Then Tom, the HOA moneykeeper, dropped a big shock. Vivian's attempt to make HOA rules cover more land had failed last year, and her official notices had fake signatures. People gasped all around the room. Someone recorded it on their phone. Another person whispered, "Is that against the law?" Vivian stuttered as people left her control slipping away. By morning, the video was everywhere on local Facebook groups with words saying, "Vivian tries to chainsaw democracy." She came back that afternoon glaring from her SUV as the chainsaw crew carved a huge eagle. I waved nicely with the humming of saws making peaceful sounds behind me. The event had become a fun festival for families with kids watching people carve, and a coffee stand called Log Fuel. Saturday was like a crazy dream. Chainsaws roared when the sun came up, the air thick with pine smell and oil. People came to watch with folding chairs. A food truck sold bacon on sticks next to a guy selling chainsaw. Fortune-telling Vivian made her last big try, coming with a full wedding crew. People bringing food, flower people, a harp player wheeling a golden instrument. Elise, covered in mud in her fancy dress, looked really unhappy. Vivian told people to set up tents on a hill that she bought at auction after the HOA couldn't pay their taxes. I walked up to her with the legal papers. You're on my land without permission. She smiled. Mean, this is community event space. I handed her the property papers. Certified letter was sent. Maybe you were too busy rewriting neighborhood rules. Her smile went away. Elise looked shocked. This is ridiculous, Vivian hissed. We have people bringing food, people with flowers, a harp player. I don't care if you brought a whole circus, I said. You're on my land. The sheriff deputy Harlan came already a fan of the chainsaw events and bacon on sticks. I showed him the deed. He nodded. Lady, you need to leave. This isn't your land. Vivian's face turned shrimp pink. The daughter, almost crying, said, This is a bad dream. The harp player wheeled away. The flower person took apart the decorations. Vivian screamed about mean neighbors as her crew ran away. That evening, the chainsaw festival was amazing. A carver made a life-sized eagle called Freedom of Saw. Vivian's meltdown became a funny internet picture. Her sacred event words got made fun of everywhere. Sunday's last day brought Sawdust Sam, a famous carver whose dragon wrapped around cabin statue inspired by local drama, won first prize. He gave it to my porch. Roger, the HOA second in charge, quit whispering that Vivian's time as president wouldn't last the week. The next day, an environmental worker. Torres came to check an anonymous loud noise complaint. My permits were all good, impressing him. Vivian watched from her SUV beaten, then drove away. Neighbors brought me cookies and said nice things. A wooden sign came naming me an honorary independent landkeeper. At the HOA vote, Vivian got kicked out by everyone, leaving her pearls on the table like a fallen queen's crown. She moved to a beige mailbox neighborhood, chasing control somewhere else. I hung a sign, private land chainsaws, welcome weddings, only if you say sorry in writing first. My cabin, now a symbol of fighting back, stood quiet under the stars, the dragon watching over a hard-won victory. Vivian had wanted something no one would forget. She got it, just not the way she planned.